Let's make a weaving. I'm going to need a piece of cardboard, some leftover yarn, and some twine. It doesn't have to be twine. It can be just any sturdy piece of string or yarn that you might have at your house. Make sure that it's strong enough so when we're working on our project it won't tear. How do you make sure it's strong enough? Well, give it a little tug. If I pull on this, it doesn't break. If I pull on this kitchen twine, it snaps pretty easily. Don't want that to happen while we're working on a project, so we're going to put that one aside. For the first step, we need to make a loom. We need to have something to put all of our yarn pieces in. And to do that, I'm going to use my ruler. I'm going to line up my ruler at the edge of my cardboard, and I'm going to make a little mark at every quarter of an inch. I'm going to make little marks all the way across. And I'm going to bring my ruler down to the bottom, still working at a quarter of an inch. Now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut some small notches on both sides of my cardboard. Next, I'm going to take my strong string and I'm going to slip it into the notch. Let's put a little tape on this end just so it won't move away from us. And now I'm going to start wrapping my loom. Just going to go around the edges of each of the notches. If your notches don't seem to be holding your string that you chose to use for this part of the project, you might need to make them a little longer. But you do want to tuck them in there kind of snugly. Just not too snug that you bend the little tab down. When I wrapped my string, I did not cut it beforehand. I made sure that I had enough just by using the entire ball of string and weaving through all of the notches. This time I do need to cut a piece because if I can't use it all the way through, it will all get tangled up on me. So what I want to do is I want to cut a piece about the length of my arm. To do my weaving, I need to take my string and I need to go over and under each of the pieces of the string that's already in the loom. I like to pick up each string, every other string, and slide the yarn through. So I'm going to pull this all the way through and just leave a tiny tail at this end. I'm going to push it down with my fingers all the way to the very bottom. And now it's time to think about the U-turn. If you have a tapestry needle, just put your string on, just like you would when you're sewing. But if you don't have one of these, you can use a paper clip. I'm going to take my string, slip it through the center of the paper clip, and I'm going to tie a little knot, just one over and under. To continue, you have to take a U-turn. So this last string needs to be caught inside of my yarn. And how do I do that? In this case, I can see that my string, the first piece of yarn went over that last string of my loom, so I'm going to need to make my U-turn by going under it. And I'll show you what happens when I do that. See how it is caught between those pieces? That's what I want. Make sure you don't pull too hard. We don't want it to start bending. We want it to stay nice and even and level. Then I'm going to keep weaving until my string runs out. Over and under, all the way through. Make sure as you're weaving, you're tucking them down nice and tight. Now I'm going to run out of string, so what do I do next? I simply start a new piece. Remember, cut it about the length of your arm. And then I'm going to keep weaving until the entire project is filled with yarn. Stand by to see what to make with this project when you're finished. So when you start a new piece of yarn, make sure that you're paying attention to what happened in the last piece of yarn. I want to keep all my tails on one side. This one didn't work out quite so well, but I can make that work later. I'm going to try and keep the rest of my tails on the right side of my project. So to do that, I need to make sure that I'm starting this purple opposite of what the red did. And here you can see this red came across here in front, then it took its U-turn and went underneath. So when I start my purple, I have to do the opposite of that. I have to go over first and then under. And as you see, when I start to squish this down together, you will see that they do the reverse. They do the opposite of what the last one has done. That's what you want to see on your project. You don't want to see any long strips where you can see lots of this white thread coming through, or any long strips where you don't see that white at all. Alright, once you have enough string in your project for whatever you want to make, let's talk about how to get it off of your loom. I want to make sure that I have enough string so that I can tie some knots. I don't have to tie a knot on both sides because I can just slip it off the loom here, and you can see we're right at the edge, so I don't have to worry about that on this side. But on this side I'm going to have to tie knots. I need to tie all of these strings together so that my weaving doesn't fall apart. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this as far away as possible. And if I just cut two at a time, I can then decide to come in here and tie these guys together. Now, once you've got all your little pieces tied together, then all we need to do is just pull this off the other end of the cardboard loom. Those loops are already there, so you don't have to make another knot. What are you going to do with it now? Well, let's see what we can make out of it. First, I'm just going to straighten it out a little bit, trim off any of the extra pieces. I'm going to hide that piece of red that didn't go on the side I wanted it to go in. I'm just going to stick it between two other layers. If you do decide to trim off some of these extra strings, make sure you don't cut too close to the knot, because the knots can unravel on you, and you don't want that to happen. Then your project will fall apart. I'm going to thread this needle and create a little bit of a sewing mouth. If you don't know how to do any kind of back stitching, there's a video on the YouTube channel that'll show you how to make straight stitches. It isn't really as hard as it looks. Now I think we'll add some eyes. Let's glue on some wiggle eyes. I don't know what he is, but he sure is cute. That was weaving. Have fun. Thanks for visiting the art room.